Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and just with a little reminder, if you're speaking, please use your microphone and press the button on it. And when you're finished, please turn it off so it doesn't interfere with everybody else. So calling the meeting to order on 703 Turner Road. And we have the applicants here. Just to start things off, I'd like to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, which was for 285 Despard. And could somebody move that those minutes be accepted?
Bruce can move.
Okay, Bruce moved and seconder. Oh, that's right. I guess it'll be me because these two weren't here, so. Okay, so with that little bit of business done, would you like to commence your presentation? Your mic is the same there. There's a little button with a face and a little voice icon there, so you press that.
And you have to continue holding it, or? Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, okay. Hello, panel. My name is Lindsay Baker, and this is my business partner and good friend, Peter Waldebler. And we're here today to discuss our development plans for 703 Turner Road. I'm currently already working in Parksville. I'm from Victoria. I'm a building designer by trade in Victoria, and I've been doing work for about 15 years now as a designer. I'm building at 151 Shelley Road, and we're just finishing right now. And so I've got to know the municipality really well and really like it here. And I was able to find this property. My wife and myself were picking blackberries there, and it's just a couple blocks away from where we are. So I really liked it, and that's how we found it. And just to get straight to the point of why we feel this development fits well on this property. First off, the building site itself, as you probably know, is an existing gravel pit, which was used for different types of material mining, such as as a concrete plant. And now that's been removed, and all that material is gone now. And it's a large brownfield site, which means it's not being used for anything, and it's not really growing anything except for blackberries, which is considered an invasive species. And we've created a plan that fits well on this site, and we've worked really hard for the form and character so that it meets the guidelines. We did originally put together a plan with the municipality's direction. We came back and started working with Ray and looked at how we could continue improving the design of this property to create form and character that met more of the guidelines. And we feel strongly that it does now. And to speak to the OCP, the community plan speaks to the site, building sites that are unused or unutilized. And we feel strongly that this site does have the current zoning, and we do meet the zoning. And that because of the topography of the site, that we've really met the needs of it. And I'm just gonna slow myself down there. The current zoning is RS2, which requires different types of housing. So we have a combination of 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And so there's family homes, and there's homes for people that are growing in place or elderly, or young people for new homes. It's a variety. There's 4-plexes, triplexes, duplexes. So it's a combination of all three. We're using that to help us to try to create sustainable method of construction where we can keep the price point lower. And I think in today's market, that's important. And so lower floors are garage access. The garage is the entire lower floor, which actually means that it has tandem parking. Tandem parking is not considered in the bylaw. So technically, every garage is actually double parking. So that will help reduce some of the parking concerns of the site. Now, we have looked at the site itself to make sure that the parking was broken up while driving into the site. So we've created planters that are between each driveway, which would have plants and small shrubs growing. And that's going to have put the detail there. It's going to actually be the water will be shedding off the hard surface in high rain events instead of going to the pavers. So every parking area will have a paver. It'll flow into these areas that looks like a gravel trough rock garden. And that way we can capture the water, screen the water before it goes into the water system to it for us. And then it'll also allow this growth between the parking areas so that we can keep the parking separate and hopefully limit any type of vehicle pollution, if you want to call it that, right? And so we've also on the landscape design, just walk back actually. So I've, sorry, am I wandering? Okay. Thank you, sorry. It makes it really quiet? Okay, yeah, no problem. I should get my business partner to point for me. Just for the landscape design, we did was we actually have a network of pathways throughout the site. And so those interconnect throughout the site and the front of the site. And so what we've been able to do is create the ability for accessibility for many users. And this community walks through the parks all the time. So we came to the municipality and actually on our behalf offered a right of way off the backside. And so it was a tricky location to be able to create a right of way, but it does work with a 30-meter setback off the high water of the river and a 30-meter setback off of the riparian of the low-lying ditch. And then the municipality came back and said it'd be really nice if we could tie in a right of way to the end of Tulip there. And then that connects that whole path. So right now, a lot of people use our property to cut through into the forest. And we know that it's really important that people will be able to access the park still. So that was I think a really important part of this project is making that work for everybody. And now they have the ability to be able to use that. And to speak about, so the roof lines are designed in a way so that we can capture a lot of solar energy. Every unit will have solar systems in place. As well, we do have stage 2 chargers for every unit as well. And so this allows us to flat mount solar panels to the roofs instead of having a mounting system that could actually be visually invasive. And it does allow to keep the cost down of installing them, which you can in turn install more. So, you know, our goal one day would be hopefully to be at least net zero during summer. And as prices change, you never know where that could go. Speaking to the siding type, what we're doing is we're going to be using a smooth hardy, and but I wanted it to. We originally looked at stucco. We realized that the smooth hardy with a flashing trim that matches that hardy will actually feel really natural and have a similar look to stucco, but it will age better. And it also keeps the cost down for us, which then we can return to the end user. And then the most important feature that I like the most is if you look down at the materials board that I have there, there's actually a piece of false wood. And so that's hardy board. It's a type of hardy that's pre-finished and there's several different types of material like that in different colors and different shades that you can buy. And I've used that on my current site now too, and it looks really good finished. And it's also, it doesn't need to get painted. It's really easy to clean. So for the users, it's really nice that way. And then it's also non-combustible. So it's a fiber cement, and that's important. these buildings will be sprinklered, but there's also a forest beside us, so we need to make sure that it's the buildings are as safe as possible. And we'll be using metal roofs on the lower roofs for when you walk into the entrances where you can see the metal roofs. So that will have a nice feel. This is a standard corrugated metal. And then our top roofs will have a black asphalt is what our plan is. And do you want to add anything?
I think you just took all the 10 minutes away from from us here. I think you summed it up nicely. I just want to say that we've worked over the last several months hand in hand with the planning department here. We feel like we've come up with a really nice design for this property. We could have gone with a higher density. We brought it back. Was it 68 that this conforms to? 68 units?
The site does allow 69 units.
30 lots per hectare. We've scaled it back to 56, just being thoughtful as to how the layout, that which was very important to us, how this all laid out, and to tie the rec building in nicely, the communal garden that you can all see there. We feel like we hit a home run with this. Yeah, so.
Yeah,
like to present
I
this to
didn't
you.
mention that there is the network of pathways does go to the community garden, which is on that large open side, which will get a really good sun exposure. And so in every unit's designated a spot in that community garden. So we've done it in a way that I think it's 75 square feet per unit. Now, most units, there's a lot, maybe half the units would actually use it. So most likely people would have a little bit bigger garden plot, but if everyone did use it, they have enough that they could be growing their own veggies and whatnot. And yeah, I feel like that's all we need to say in our presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to your questions.
Just to stop you just for a minute, so nobody will present regarding landscape.
Yeah, so Chris, our landscape architect, is available. We have worked with him on this and came up with a really good plan. He did ask if we needed him here. We felt it was okay that we were going to present on our own. And so to speak to the species of the trees and the plants, we've worked with him on all those. And he's available throughout the whole construction process to be involved.
Okay. I think we'll just start off with the panel comments, which is our usual procedure here. So Kate, would you like to start?
Sure. Are we commenting and asking questions is okay? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate all of what you've communicated to us today and what you've included in the package. I am a registered landscape architect, so I'm the landscape architect on the panel. I think I'm going to kind of focus my attention on the landscape plan, since we have others who are much better to speak to the building character. And then maybe I'll come back and talk more about the layout. Anyways, could so you have a registered landscape architect
That's right.
working with you?
Yeah.
This fellow,
He's
Chris?
Victoria that we work with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear.
It's in the documentations that we submitted. He has wrote a letter to staff in regards to this. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I wish hopefully you'll be able to answer a few questions for me. I do think it's too bad he's not here because there are some, I have some strong questions. And
Yeah, okay.
so firstly, I'd just like to ask you a few questions about the trees and the plant selection and what was driving the choices. Yeah, so if I start there,
Go ahead.
no,
I
so
was just looking. I thought we
so,
had something printed out. Yeah.
I'm assuming what we were given is what is still the plan.
That's right. Yeah.
So I just have a lot of questions about the tree choices.
Okay.
And if I wonder if you could reflect on the rationale for the tree choices.
Okay. Do you want me to lead the conversation?
Yeah.
It was more, so we did pick the dogwood tree. That was probably the most predominant tree that's gonna be used on the site. That was a conversation between the three of us that we thought that was an appropriate tree here on the island to be using. Now we did pick a native willow as well. And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's where I would like to, we'll start. That's why I'm happy to hear you have a landscape architect. I thought you didn't, and then that kind of revealed some of the choices made. The willow that you're specifying is not native to the island. It's a southern North American willow.
Yeah.
It's not one that grows here. And it's one that likes a very wet foot and
Yeah.
grows very large. So I don't think it would be the appropriate tree for this site, and as specifically to where it's been located. If you were sort of placing it where you were transitioning to the riparian area setback, there's some logic there, but then I would say use our native species to the island. This isn't a native species to BC, in fact. And then the dogwood, yeah, so I can just see there's a lack of attention and detail to even naming the trees.
Mhm.
The Cornus mass is our native dogwood, and Cornus natalii, but we actually don't, it's very hard to get and spec now because it's susceptible to some diseases. So we use a hybrid dogwood, Eddie's
Okay.
White Wonder. So firstly, I would recommend that the landscape architect just review the availability of the tree and get the correct insight and information. And then I would also, so that step there, right there. I'm finding that the way that you've labeled your trees is not accurate to our
Right.
existing conditions. It's
Yeah.
not a native willow. Also sorry, just my eyesight is going. The choke cherry is also not an indigenous species to our island.
So that's my mistake. See, I've just done a development just a couple blocks away from that, and that's what I had called up there as a tree that would be allowed. And so going in the exact same zoning, exact same process, I'd done that already on my other site, and it worked. It was
Yeah.
working. So I thought that was okay. It's considering this is a similar site, similar zoning, that it'd be okay to do that. So, yeah.
100% you can spec ornamental trees that are from other places, but I just want to be clear what you actually have here that is native, because the guidelines suggest using a native plant palette as much as possible. And I think given your site location, I would really love you to lean into that.
I would, and we appreciate the guidance on it. Like,
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
pushing back in that way at all.
No. So the
to
only
come up with
native
Yeah,
tree you have here is the fir.
yeah.
The only native plant that's spec'd
Is
on the
okay.
drawings, and so I that's why I was questioning whether you had a landscape architect
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're really not representing themselves well in saying that they're using native plants when there's only one tree.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also it is the choice of some of the trees. So we have the magnolia, the southern, the Magnolia grandifolia, flora, thank you, which is an evergreen magnolia, and it
Mhm.
grows very large.
Yeah.
And I see that that's been placed in between the two, sort of in that internal kind of.
Yeah, that was on purpose, actually. We were in conversations with planning. There is one of the regulations of the guideline is to limit privacy concerns of bedroom windows.
Mhm.
And so I have that tree on my site now as well. And I do love the way it blooms and how pretty it is.
Mhm.
So we spaced it along the middle. I know that it's a large tree, but it's also going to add that privacy break between the units. So that was the justification for that. Yeah.
Okay, well, it might be something to reconsider, given the close proximity of buildings to each other and light coming in and
Yeah, okay.
penetration, given it's an evergreen.
I actually really agree with you with that too. So I guess it's just a matter of
Mhm.
finding a
It's
happy,
huge evergreen leaves, so
medium that would work there
Yeah.
would be a more better choice.
I think you could achieve screening for those rooms with a mix of even more trees, a greater variety and scaling them down so they're not as large growing.
Yeah, okay, just as
yeah.
long as there's 2 stories tall, that's all that
Yeah,
matters. for
so
the
there's
tax
lots of
items.
great
Yeah.
columnar trees that would fit your site and you wouldn't have to worry about the scale of the tree and the shading of the tree. So I think just some more attention can be given here
Yeah,
to the selection. This tree is great out in the open where you have a lot of space to see it. So on your edges or in some of those recreational spaces you've indicated. If it's a tree that everyone is happy and married to using, I don't think the siting of it is considered well enough.
Okay.
Okay, and that's kind of true for a lot of the plants and trees. So I see that the spaces between the buildings going perpendicular to the driveways, the spaces between.
Mhm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just kind of reading off the plan. It suggests that there will be sort of drought tolerant plants in there.
Mhm.
That looks like a very shady space. And I'm going to suggest you may want to review, like, also what I'm finding challenging with what you've presented is in the guidelines, they suggest using native plants and also including mature trees, but I don't have any tree sizing or plant specificity. I don't have a full plant list. They're saying native plants and these sort of 4 perennials that you have listed, the echinacea, the lavender, the oatgrass, and the euphorbia. So more specificity would really help us understand if this is going to work for what you want it to do. Okay, so typically I would expect to see a full list of the plant species and the sizes, because then I'll know, oh, they're speccing a 5 centimeter caliper tree. That's a little bit larger. So I can assume, it would fall into the more mature tree category that the guidelines ask for. And then also, I'm curious about sorry, I'm just, this is sort of the expectation that I would want to see in a presentation here. The spaces between the driveways, I appreciate that you've contemplated that separation between 2 and having the small planter,
Mhm.
and that you're going to utilize it for part of your stormwater management and water treatment. So are you working with an engineer or how has that
We
been
have a
developed?
geotech, we have a ecologist, we have a civil engineer, structural engineer.
Okay.
We have every layer of professional you can imagine. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and they've indicated that the sort of section detail is what will work in that context for here.
Yes, so-
And then, so does that connect to a greater storage, or where is the water that's going into those then going?
So the geotechnical engineer has done his report on what the infiltration rate is of the site.
Mhm.
And then the civil engineer uses that math to come up with a solution for storm management on site. And that's,
Yes, I understand all of
Yeah,
that,
that-
but where will the water in those little sort of troughs between go?
oh, the water that's connect through the parking area,
Mhm.
that would be connected into the 4-inch closed pipe
Mhm.
that's leaving the house. So the perforated pipes that leave the house, they connect to a 4-inch
So it's
closed
all,
pipe connected to the storm drain system and then goes into the storm management itself as well. So it's just one first layer of storm management.
Mhm.
There'd be another entire system in place that's engineered by the civil engineer. Yeah.
okay. So then that, once again, going back to the sort of plant species that you've indicated are going to go in there, those are all perennials. So they're only going to provide that sort of separation and interest seasonally. And I would really like you to look at something that would be including some more evergreen or something that provides you with the full seasonal plant kind of interest, because
Mhm.
the intent of beyond your water management strategy, there is a specification in the guidelines, the development permit area, that you should screen or separate parking. And so that if that's
that
your
should be-
intent, you need to
yeah.
consider the seasonal screening. Okay,
Mhm.
so with your plant palette again, because of, and then also I would urge you to move away from planting the euphorbia. It is not listed as invasive, but its behavior is very invasive.
Okay.
It reseeds itself and can overpopulate, especially in areas where you have a lot of rock and drought. And then also it is, it's not the ideal with kids and family because it has, the latex, has a latex sap that can cause irritation to the skin if you pick it or whatever. That's a minor detail, my
No,
point.
but
I'm more-
these things are important.
yeah, these are all things the landscape architect should be
Yeah.
considering when they're making these choices.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, I would really, I don't feel the landscape plan is conceived enough for me to comment appropriately. And I think there needs to be some more work and careful attention to understanding the site conditions. So shade,
Yeah.
sun, seasonal interest, appropriate size of tree, plant. And I would encourage you to really embrace bringing in some of our native vegetation. It is encouraged in the design guidelines, and I would love for you to do that, especially given you're right on the park and you have a beautiful inspiration there, and draw from that and pull that into your site. And then I think you will start to feel it more integrated. And so that's sort of my step one comments. I think I'm going to pause and let the other, I would like to sort of circle back and talk about the accessibility of the site, but I think I'll just pause there for a moment and let the others speak, and then maybe we'll return to the accessibility. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. But thank you. I'm just here to make sure
No, I'm not,
the town.
we're
gets
not
the best.
insulted at all right
Oh,
now.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is good
yeah.
rapport. It's really
Okay.
good. And I do understand that these things are always growing and changing. And that's the story of my
Yeah.
life. As a building designer, I'm always working with
Yeah.
people and changing things. I feel that, you know, the level of detail, especially going into construction, there'll be a higher level of detail, especially like civil engineering, geotechnical engineering, architectural, all those different layers. You continue getting things more organized and more detailed. So
Yeah.
taking everything that you have, incorporating in the direct plan right now, and then continuing forward is exactly
Yeah.
what we'd be doing. Yeah.
That is all true, but at the same time, when I'm working and I'm doing work for a client and at this level and being presented at DP, that information is there.
Mhm.
That detail is already there. And then we can properly comment.
We're
And
gonna have some conversations for sure. Yeah,
yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ian Naimath, architect. I was wondering whether you could just throw some light onto your site planning and kind of explain how the layout of the site actually responds to this beautiful site. I have lots of questions, but let's start with that one.
Yeah, we wanted the site to flow. That's why we have the U-shaped turnaround compared to trying to do two hammerhead dead ends, which we did explore as well. So, and we also speak into the units and their environment in the units. They are backed on to this beautiful environment. So when you're in the unit, you're gonna be able to open your doors and have the feeling of a forest right there with you. Now, that is not changing. We're not cutting trees. There's no trees to cut down. We're not cutting any branches. Nothing's changing there. So we want to utilize the site that's completely bare and open. And so we're not trying to go anywhere else that we're not supposed to be. But we wanted to utilize the area in the best way possible. And that's why we created this U shape. And the internal corridor down the middle, what we've done is made it a really efficient way to do a utility corridor. And so that helped govern us for that. And we wanted to have this to Turner Road streetscape. So we created corner lots where we have to have some sort of frontage facing Turner. So what we did was we have our electrical buildings or lean-tos off the side of the buildings to create roof lines and doors off the sides of Turner facing the road so that you feel like you have frontage on that side as well as going into the strata, you also have your main entrance. So it's always tricky when you have a corner building that way. Again, the utility corridor, we're going to keep the boulevard as trees where they are in place, but we're going to be adding a fence and a nice detail between the buildings so that it has this nice feeling of where people can congregate and move through that internal space. And that's why we took the direction we did with the site, is the way that it looped around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that it really worries me a lot, the way the building's laid out, because it just seems that you have tried to fit in a mechanical way as much as you could on the site and didn't really appreciate what was around you. It seems like only a few of the houses get a backdoor view to the remnant property, which is the conservation area, for flood and all the rest of it. That's a precious piece of site, and only a few of the people get to experience that. The bulk of the property is inside. One of the most concerning things I notice is that there's no real internal circulation for people to walk. You've shown a walkway in between two rows of buildings in the middle of the site, but I think that's kind of a disastrous route or disastrous area for anybody to be in. There's no hint of any sidewalks or anything like that, in a way that you can communicate along the street frontages of the buildings. So that really worries me, because you're going to be walking in the street mainly, whatever kids there are, and it's designed for kids, this project. So that's very, very concerning of what, and there seems to be, and as a result of putting that number of people in that particular fashion, you've basically created a street project with no response for where the project is. We are right next to the Parksville Beach. We're next to the river. We have that ditch that gets filled up. We have a lot of forested areas. And of great concern is the flood area that's shown on the map. And I'm not sure what situation, I'll come back to that. But so you've encased the entire building with what is theoretically buildable, and you're just outside of the line that's precious. So what's happened is you've sacrificed the communal building, and that's been squeezed into the very smallest area, instead of it being as a focus for the whole project. And the gardens that you have provided for the people are not a focus. They are behind a row of houses, and there is no consideration of making those things a communal garden in terms of how do you encourage the community to use it. I would imagine after a while, it may get sort of a little bit strange for people to, if they wanted to garden, they'd be walking around in people's backyards, although there are no actual backyards shown on the drawings. It's the leftover space because it was an odd shape. And you've lost an opportunity to make that into a huge focus, that plus the communal buildings. So I'm really worried about the effect that this planning will have in the future for all of the families that live there. That space between the buildings is, I think it's kind of deadly, if there are kids or people with dogs walking down there, there's not enough space for anything to happen there. So I'm really concerned about the building. I'm concerned about the communal building, which is not big enough for this number of people. I did a quick calculation and you have 56 units, I think. And if you multiply that by 3, and some of these units have got more spaces, more number of people in them. But if you just took an average and say, okay, let's multiply 56 by 3, it's 168 people. Well, even if half of those people turned up for an event in that communal space, they wouldn't be able to use it. Basically, the 2 usable spaces you have in it kind of overgrown bedroom sizes. They're 15 by 15, which is a very small space. So there's something missing. I think you've taken, you've worked very hard and you've squeezed everything out of it. You've taken as many units as you can and broken it up and kind of just ignored what the project could be for that area and just plotted them on the ground because they fit. So, I'm sorry, but the people that are going to be living there are going to be forced to live in a certain way, and it could have been very different had some of the open space been taken into account where most people could get views, but in this layout, the way it's shown, only a few people get to look at the forest or appreciate the environment where they live through their back windows, and that's it. I'll leave it at that for the moment, but I have lots of other things, but I'll let some of the other members.
Can I respond or shall I just?
Well, maybe you should wait. I'm sure there's something else that may come up and then you can respond generally.
Mhm.
Hi, my name is Bruce. My background is building technology. I'm more nuts and bolts than esoteric things. In general, we're supposed to comment on what's the wording? The form and character with the materials and the shapes and the forms, and in that way you've conformed with the requirements. I see you have a fire truck on here. It looks like a very small one. That was my first worry, is how does a fire truck get in here and around? But I assume the fire
We
department
checked
cleared
with
all
them, I
that off.
checked with the civil engineer, made sure it was all
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. You had talked about how accessible the site is with these paths, but of course, all of the paths have stairs in them. Meaning somebody in a wheelchair can't use them. You talked about the elderly being one of your clients, but you're not going to get any elderly buying into places with 2 full flights of stairs in each unit. So that's just a comment. I'm worried a little about your grades in the first units, especially building 17. We got a 15% grade coming from the street and a 15% grade on the driveway going down to their building. And in the section through there, it looks like even at that, you've fudged the ground floor. It looks like the headroom's been cut down by a foot from all the other units, just to make the walkway level behind the buildings. Kind of concerns me, but again, that's an engineering thing that then, you'll be told if it doesn't work by the engineers who review it. Yeah, I don't really have any other comments. I mean, I understand what you're doing economically. I mean, there's a certain price point you have to sell units at, you have to have a certain number of units. But I agree with other comments that maybe you're 1 or 2 units too many. I'm concerned with how much the amenity space was cut down from 2.3 square meters per unit to 0.8. I mean, that's pretty severe. And you rationalize it by the floodplain, but that's not really the issue. The issue is what there's so many units on the site, you can't fit in the amenity space. And that's all I really have to say. The look of it is fine, which is what I'm commenting on.
Thank you, Tony. Hello, and thank you for coming and presenting today. I will start with something that I appreciate is that because you are working with the slope and not filling in everything, that long line of houses in fact steps down, and that's maybe a little bit easier to manage. When I did have a chance to look at the design, I did feel, a little bit, not as eloquently as Ian here, but it just looks like a lot of hard lines in a space that maybe could have something different. And I'm not an architect, I don't want to say that, but it just really feels like that. And I do have some strong thoughts about some of the landscaping as well, although they've been mentioned. I would caution, and again, I'm not a gardener, not a landscaper, but from what I know of euphorbia, given that this is going to be would encourage families to move there, and I have euphorbia at my place, and I think it's such a dramatic and striking plant, but it really can cause some skin rashes and the like. It's related to something much nastier in Palm Springs that I was told don't touch. So, there are concerns there. I was wondering as well about I think it's the west, it would be the west side. From the landscaping, I don't see a lot of planting there. And yet that is the side of the property that is immediately adjacent to a single family dwelling. And from what I've read and understand of the directions is that attention should be paid to screening when you're having that impact with a resident right next door. Now, in this case, you're quite fortunate because it's really the only one that side, but I don't see a lot of screening there. Now, it looks to me that because of the constraints of the site, because there is a floodplain issue, there is what they call here a relic channel. I really wouldn't call it a ditch. I know this property somewhat, and it often has water in it and occasionally fish, but so I know that you have constraints with that site. And so perhaps that's why it's quite close to the boundary on that side. So I don't know if there's columnar trees that could go in there, some other things that would afford and, be considerate of the neighbor. And that property next door has some amazing trees on it, by the way. I would also echo that if you've got trees down the center, I would hate to see, if they're larger, I would hate to see them be evergreen in a sense, and that, you really want to get some light in the winter months. And so in some cases, some places, I think deciduous would be the way to go, despite the leaves that, you get that light in the fall and the winter, but you get some canopy in the hotter months and the screening time. I'm a retired educator, and understanding that this is going to appeal to families, I was a little bit concerned, more than concerned, thinking about children here. Children the reality is you go out the door and then you're on your bike or your scooter or your whatever, you're connecting with your friends. And as someone else mentioned, there's a pathway through the middle of the 2 rows, but it's hard to see, it looks like it's kind of go out and play in the street, children. And I worry a little bit about that. And also, although you mentioned that connection with the forest, it seems to me that there's only a few spots where, well, I guess that second row really wouldn't get much of a forest view, but I just, those are my takes on it. So actually, I will add one more. I was thinking that if this is a final plan, particularly given that it does have sort of those, it has a lot of hard edges. There's a lot of, and I don't necessarily mind that, but combined at times with some of these very dark colors or a lot of contrast, again, there I'm thinking specifically of the townhouses that would be along the west side, along the one neighbor house there, that, if you're looking out there, what do those people see? So I was just wondering about that. I think some of the palette is nice. So that soft gray is a very natural color. You get that weathered cedar kind of a look. So I'm really not an expert in those areas, but those are questions that I ask.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony Horler. I was a structural engineer all my career, working with architects, so definitely had some building experience. I wasn't aware that you could have had 68 units, so I guess I should commend you for having 56 and not going the whole 9 yards with this. It does still feel dense to me. That's just a subjective comment. I wondered how much of this property is in the floodplain. Clearly the lower floor of the amenity building is, because it's not habitable, but I wondered if that extends into the residential areas. And I don't mind if you answer that question just right off the cuff here.
Yeah, so all our living space is above the flood construction level.
So the garage is,
Yeah, all our living space is
Okay.
above the garage level. Yeah.
okay. So area 4, you've probably read the guidelines for development permit area 4. Starts off by referring to high quality buildings with architectural design.
Mhm.
So without seeming to be overly critical, I don't see the presentation here being high quality. And I know there's a balance between budget and requirements, and we always are prepared to give and take a little bit on that, but it leads into my next point, which is that in area 4, section 1K, registered architect is required for this project. And that means somebody who takes responsibility for it. And in addition, in 2K, a registered landscape architect is required for this project. So we're used to seeing those names on the drawings when they come in here. So, and you have mentioned you have a number of consultants on a list that you've mentioned there, but nothing on the drawings.
Yeah, the wording of that is suggested, not required.
Don't
For a registered architect. So we do meet all building part 9 building code. And this is 17 individual buildings, all less than 5 units. The rules are in place as for the BCBC and for the Architects Act, that anything 5 or more is required for a registered architect. I just built 6 units all at the same time in Parksville. And I'm done now. And that was all under me as a building designer. And this is the exact same site. It's a multifamily site. It's one lot and multiple units. It's the exact same thing. We are trying to keep the price down so we can sell these, so people can have homes. There's a provincial legislation to create homes, right? We could fit 68 units on there. We stepped back. We're at 56 right now. Really, the province would want us to have more. That's what they're saying to everybody. And we're here, yeah, we have a lot of density here, but that's what everyone needs to have. So to keep the costs down, there's got to be a happy medium where we work hard to have the exteriors and the forming character look proper, but then we need to be able to make the site work so that it can have that density. We're not even supposed to be here talking about density. We're supposed to be talking about the forming character of it.
Yeah, and form and character in this case is the reason I'm saying that it says should have an architect. Now, it didn't go flat out and say shall. That's semantics to me, but I just think
You
when
just
that
said it was
number.
required and now you're saying it should.
I can address.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, I gotta say, I do know the AIBC would permit you to do this. This is City of Parksville that I'm referring to.
Well, I've talked to Blaine and I've talked to all the planning department about it. We've talked about this in detail, just to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So it's not like it's been an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and just hang on a sec, Ray. We are just recommending. We don't hold the gravity to enforce this, but you know, I think that a number of us feel that the involvement of an architect would have benefited this project. And you are allowed to have them in a kind of consulting role where they just provide a letter to assure us that it meets the building code. So that's another option that's open to you. But, you know, as Kate has pointed out, the benefit of having a landscape architect here would have been enormous.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you.
Just up to the mic if you would, so that Wendy can hear you.
Just addressing, I'm a retired architect and I was a planner as well. And I was asked to look at the buildings, not the site development. And there was certain commentary we made about what contemporary appearance may be, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the Architects Act, because I looked at it in the same way that Tony did, but I mean, it does say, and this is the Architects Regulation now, which has come out recently, the AIBC, and it says architect required on any residential building with 5 or more dwelling units. And then there's a size as well, where there's a limit. And so what it doesn't say, which it should say maybe, is on a specific site area, but it doesn't. You could go on, you could have hundreds of 4-unit buildings. And I think maybe that would need clarification. Just making a point, because I was an architect. But we were asked, so if I could just comment on the maybe slightly overlooked, this is an economy development, yes. And I think they're going to a price point where they're sort of got some challenges. And they're talking today about price points today of about 650,000, which is pretty good for a 1,500 square foot unit. So they've got that challenge of a double entry and exit because of potential flood in some vast amount of time, which is once, I think, in 100 years is the probability of a certain height, not to the floor level, but to the garage level. So they have to have a double access point, which is street level access, and the walkways at the back, which are a story higher than the front of the building. So there's some challenges, and it could indeed, and everything the gentleman there said was right about an ideal pocket community, because I've designed them. But this is not really a pocket community, and it's got those other constraints, and it would be ideal to have that. It would be more challenging, though, to get these double exit points, entry and exit points, running around the back through, say, a central community center. And yes, and that would be ideal. And I agree with the gentleman totally, but I think that whole price point thing and how much each lot is and drainage, et cetera, if they can pitch it at that sort of figure, I think that's pretty optimistic. And so I think that sort of colors this, what is a basic solution. Anyway, I just wanted to say my little bit about that. Regards to the landscape architecture, it is disappointing that the registered landscape architect didn't, and we talked about this, about go more towards native local vegetation. I just would like to say that because I think they have to
We're gonna have to, yeah.
go back to the drawing board, if that's the right expression, which I still do sometimes. Thank you for your time, Chair. Thank you.
Anyway, just to continue, because I hadn't quite got through my list yet, nothing too serious here, but I don't agree with the deletion of the central garbage collection area. You got 56 units here. I assume that you're going to use the RDN method of 3 bins per. So we have like the potential for 168 of these things to be out on garbage day. And with a single width door entry into the garage, I'm wondering how many of them will actually be kept in there. And that's one of the things you've asked for an exception for. And personally, I think it would be better served with a central area so that the place looked better instead of having all these containers.
Yeah, people have such mixed feelings regarding garbage. We did create in the single car garage, which is actually tandem. It's fairly wide in there, and in the garage there's actually an enclosed space that's going to be a garbage recycling area. That's for that you can roll your containers in, have them in their specific area. They're not just floating around anywhere around outside or in the garage anywhere. So yeah, on the day of, they'd be rolled out to curbside, which we've confirmed is okay for pickup. And I've done that on my own current site right now too. I do find that having containers that people can put, carpet or sofas or whatever happens, they get so full, and it's not ideal either. I've lived in that circumstance when it's really hard because they're full and you can't use them. So as like a homeowner, that you have your own home, it's your own space, your own garbage, your own driveway, your own bedrooms, your own access, all these things are really important for a homeowner. And so that was the rationale why we went that direction. Yeah.
And they're enclosed in what way in the garage?
So in the garage space, there's actually there's a garbage room in each garage. You see that on the garage floor plan where we've designated an area which is going to be specific to the garbage can, the recycling can, and the compost.
So I can pull up the plans. We did not include floor plans in your submission package. There were a lot of pages of plans and we also, I may have included it in error, but I usually try not to put the floor plans in there because typically we're looking at the form and character of the buildings. So just to direct the conversations a little bit.
Can you guys vouch for me that that is in there on the floor plan?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there was no plans. So I didn't even appreciate it with double B. Yeah. I haven't finished yet. Just a couple of things and we usually, everybody have just a second round to see if they forgot anything. Because you pointed out these are double deep and I didn't pick that up because I didn't have a floor plan. That's great. You got plain flat garage doors on these units. There's not so much as a window in them. So light wise, those are going to be long and dark. Could I encourage you to put a window in your garage door? You know, it's pretty residential standard these days to have some light into your garage.
Yeah, we definitely can do that. And I was wanting to add lots of light in there, but there was, so I'm quite okay doing that. Yeah.
Okay. And just a question, a clarification. Are your electric vehicle and solar panels roughed in or installed?
No, we've had a full pricing of the whole site for solar panels for every single
All-
building,
all
all
in.
units. And we're going to engage that company or one that's local. So, yeah.
Okay. I think that's all I had. So maybe just do and Mary, we'll start with you since you're down that end now.
Thank you, Tony. I like the idea that the garbage, et cetera, is indoors. Since you're the builder who built the ones on Shelley Road, you know that the bear regularly travels on that lane. From San Periel, well, probably Ratrevers, San Periel, over the river along that very lane. I've seen photos and camera stuff and down to Tulip and then down along the other lane. So that would be a real issue because if garbage is out, then that will be a dead bear sooner than later. So that's really great. And I don't know if anybody here has any comments about any of the colors because I'm really not a color person, but I do worry a little bit about some of the accommodations. Again, I'm thinking mostly of a single family right next door who's now going to be seeing all these, really strong contrasts, which might be hard for the brain to just ignore and look beyond to the tree. So, but if someone else could speak to that, that's great.
I just previously just spoke to the landscape and more specifically about the plants, but I didn't really talk to the accessibility or like the movement of the site and Ian referenced it. And I think there's some opportunities that are being missed in how you connect all the folks who are going to live here to the amenities you're providing, including the community garden, which also is pretty vague in its conception at this point. And we would have probably liked to see it a little more well-conceived, designed. How are you accommodating what is needed for a community garden? So you need access to water, tools, shed, all of that kind of thing needs to be, I think, considered and incorporated if you want it to be successful, not just a sort of weedy corner of the site. But I do think, I can see even with the other issues are around the physical accessibility of the site in that it isn't accessible if you have a mobility challenge.
Can I just
correct?
speak to that right
Yeah,
away? Because
yeah.
we already have a plan for that actually. So we do feel that there's where the stairs are located,
Yeah.
that we are able to ramp it. So we've been looking at that in detail, that we
Okay.
do feel that, I'm not sure if we can get to a 1 in 10 slope for ramping, but there will be something very similar to that where the stairs are off the back. And because the grade does come down, so the buildings on this side are higher, and that's why
Yeah,
we have the
so
steps.
could you kind of walk me through, I'm living in, I'm just trying to like, okay, what unit? Sorry, my reading. I'm in the buildings, 1, 2, or 3, and I want to go to the community garden. How am I getting there?
Yeah, I'll just bring this this way so I can point.
Was that your question?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would be great up there.
I'm just gonna go the landscape plan here if it just, there we go. Okay, yeah, okay. It's probably easier if I use a cursor, as long as I go slow, it's pretty good. So we're talking about 1, 2, and 3 down the side,
Yeah,
and there's the. You want me to use the pointer?
yeah. And then just in general, how people are moving from their
Yeah,
homes to
this is,
to
yeah,
their community, to the amenity space, to the community garden, all of that.
I do feel that we can put some planting down this side. We can probably reduce the size of the patios and put some planting on there. Now, we have met with that neighbor numerous times. We've walked his site. We're in direct communication with him. There's a lot of work that's been with him. And so we do know his house is further back and that it doesn't have any windows on his side, and that there was a small building over here closest to us. So he didn't say to us at any point that he was concerned about what we had here. But I do agree with you that it's really nice for our new people that were moving in, as well as them, that there'd be some sort of separation. So I agree that we should probably put that in place. Now for the stairs here, so it is all interconnected. There's a walkway that comes all the way down these buildings here, and then crosses a bridge right here and connects to the walkway here where we show stairs. We can get rid of these stairs here and put a ramp. And then you walk along here to these stairs, which we can actually get a ramp
Okay.
there too. There's a long enough run.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The walkway in front of the units, that is, what direction? North, that are, yeah, the elevated walkway, that's kind of
On this side,
unique.
yeah.
No, oh, sorry, no, those units.
Yeah.
So are you referencing the elevated walkway?
That's right.
And so is that public or is that communal walkway to the whole development?
That's so people can walk if there is an emergency, that we have to have that in place for a flood. And
Okay.
we are not going to be putting separations on there, and they have direct access from their space, their living space,
Okay.
onto that walkway.
Okay, I'm just
So-
making sure I understand.
So
I'm
if someone
trying
has
to-
a mobility
yeah.
issue, they could, if they wanted to, travel this whole way. We've got rid of these stairs now, and all the way to here, where you can still continue on all the way along here with no ramps or no stairs to the garden, where we also have water catchment to water the communal garden. So that was maybe something that we didn't point to for the community garden. And then same with this is a walkway right down the middle, and there's some stairs right here that we can remove because it's not too long of a run there. There's no reason to have it. We can make a ramp work there, and then come down and connect to this walkway. So it's all interconnected. All the walkways are interconnected, and then they can walk down to the road and then follow this whole road here, and then take the path all the way along here, and then connect to the paths beyond, depending on what happens with the trust. But that's not our business. We can't be involved in that, and we have no say. I had lots of conversations about what we could do and to help more, but that's something that was out of our control. So we do, like, it's, again, yeah, it's a really tricky spot because of I have to have egress for these livable spaces. And that's why the shape of it also turned into what it is. So you have direct egress, and that was governed by our geotechnical engineer. So there was many conversations with our geotechnical engineer to create the proper egress for this site. If we added single family looking homes or duplexes in the middle here, they do not work because you have no egress from them from that flood area. So how would we be able to build there? You can't in that way then. So you have to, we have this site that's ideal for multifamily. It's zoned, it's meant to be used. We have this housing shortage and we've created a really good solution for egress for this site. So that's why we're here right now.
Yeah, and we're not disputing the need for affordable housing at all. We're just trying to help you get, like, create a space that, works for everybody, right? So it is a bit awkward, and I think there's some things that you can do to improve the pedestrian connectivity of your space. And so it's helpful for you to explain
Yeah.
the intention for sure and how you move, and that central sort of, I'm going to say the central spine through the middle is for all the residents to use.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this area,
So-
it's a walkway that's private because you have all the hedging on
Yeah.
either side, so you can walk down. It's neighborly, so the hedges aren't too tall, but they add a privacy break too, so
Yeah.
that people would feel safe in their environment.
Okay, so I just wonder, speaking to some of the comments of the other panel and how there's a wish or a desire that you are better connected to the adjacent park, either with views or even that landscape coming in. I would look at opportunities to make some of this sort of the horizontal connection. So unfortunately, they don't line up, but you could see if those lined up, then we're improving the permeability of your site, the pedestrian permeability. You're creating a little view corridor that goes straight to this area. So I feel like there's room for that potentially with the density you're working with. Do you have any thoughts? Do you know what so we have this, but if we improved those two connections.
So to
Yeah.
speak to that, so the backs of these units, all these face the beautiful forest beyond. It's very thick and dense here, so they probably wouldn't see the river. You'd hear it all night long. All these units here face the forest beyond, and it's a beautiful field area back behind here. It's a really nice space. These units step a bit higher, these units step a bit higher, and these units step the highest. That will allow the upper floors to view over top of the other buildings. So in effect, we're trying to create a site that everyone has a bit of that natural environment. Not just that, but we also have very tall trees throughout it. So no matter what, while you're looking, you're going to be looking at the tree lines. To speak about the colors, because when we first started talking about the colors, we wanted all these vibrant colors. We wanted to have this, really unique feel to it. And we had all these crazy colors, and it didn't work for the site. We needed to have something that had some earth tones and that blend in really nicely, and that didn't feel like it was going to stand out. And so that's why we did pick those colors. I do like the white a lot, but I didn't want to add too many of them in there because I felt like that would take over. We did choose to try to have some in key locations when you have for your curb appeal for the Turner Road and what you're seeing off of Turner Road. So that's partly why we decided those colors the way they were. And yeah.
I just want to add, over the months of designing and redesigning, and that one really important aspect of this is to make this community, this as almost a little village connected to this beautiful piece of property that has just sat there for many years. And you don't have to go too far out your back patio or your front door, and you are in a gem of a location, the Englishman River, the whole back area connected to the Englishman estuary. It's ideal. And scaling back to 56 units, it was difficult to make this all work with that sort of density, in which we were trying to create as much density. Obviously, we all agree that's what we're here for, in doing it in a really pleasant way, and one that fits in there with charm and with that connectivity to this surrounding area, all the way to our neighbor next door, who's become a very good friend and is in full support of what we're doing here. So that was never neglected. This piece of property was first and foremost, how do we do something that is going to fit in keeping with it? The most important thing for us. And we feel like we did that even through, it's interesting listening to all your comments, and we take those comments to heart, and we'll take those back to our landscape architect, and we'll make those adjustments. Those are no brainers. Those are easy to do. And we appreciate all your comments here.
I would just like to say, we all understand the design process and that it takes many iterations to get to a point that is presentable and workable. And we understand that what you're doing and your intent and all of your relationships and where you're located and the environment you're around. Our job is to help you do something that really fits within the development permit area, that really fits in this specific area. And so we're making suggestions that we would love to see that greater connection of the design to that space. And we hope you're hearing that.
That's loud and clear,
Okay.
for sure.
So I would just hope that we can have some clear direction for staff as well today, so that we understand the trees that don't work and the plants that don't work. So we'll be able to revise those. We do understand that there's some more privacy concerns that we can help with, and there's a corridor that we can work with. And so we'd like to have clear direction for staff today to make sure that they understand what we need to do on our plans to help to make sure that we're satisfying the needs of the design panel.
I don't want you to misunderstand me either, and I laud the whole concept of trying to provide housing. I have no argument with that. And I think it would have been better if you had more housing on it. But I think the site is very special. And I think Parksville deserves the very best. And we have a very special site, and I would hate to see something that I think could be, vastly improved on for the benefit of the people that live there and for the whole community of Parksville. I have to go back to a few things. I don't know why there aren't any designated sidewalks, for instance, so that you can walk somebody in a stroller and be safe, not having to face the odd car now and then, or, say car coming. I don't know where kids will play. I don't see a sense of space where, and you've mentioned the word community, and I don't see it happening. The space around the gardening area, I just think you've treated it as a leftover space. I'm sorry, but I think that's how it comes across with the planning. I'm not sure why the houses have to be in a straight line. You have all kinds of space there. And I'm really, really saddened by the treatment of the communal building. I think it was just not an afterthought, but I mean, I just think that it could be magnificent. It could be, but somehow it's been treated as something that we have to provide, or we want to provide, and there's just a little bit of space there, so we put it there. But there's no sense of welcoming or directing somebody to the great beyond. There is no gateway to the natural area that you're sitting in the midst of. You're sitting in a jam, and I think you've lost somewhere in this whole design process. The big picture has been lost. And yes, you've got the people in there, and you've stacked everything up, and everything's very efficient. But sometimes communities need to be more than that. They need to have a sense of place. They need to have a heart. They need to have a focus. They need to feel that when you go there, you really are going to a place that you want to be, not a place where I can only afford this, so that's why I'm here. And that's what saddens me about it. And I'm just going to leave that for you. And I agree with Mary's comments about some of the colors, and maybe they won't be as dark as they're shown on these boards, but we have row housing here, which creates walls, physical, visual walls as we drive down and as we walk down, because when you have a perspective, if you were a person walking, well, there's no sidewalks. If you're walking down the middle of the street, you basically have two walls of housing and there's no relief. Nothing sticks out, nothing gets wider or smaller. There's no sense of place where you can meet somebody. The whole thing is very abstract. And the colors, I don't think add to it. I think the colors could be a bit lighter because, there are many dark days in where we live. In the wintertime, things can get pretty depressing. And, I've seen buildings where people are being very trendy and they've chosen black, hardy panel or hardy plank, and they look disastrous. And when buildings sit around after 2 or 3 years with those kinds of colors, they do look depressing. And I think the last thing we need to do is to create a depressing
I'd like to drive by,
community.
if you could drive by my site at 151 Shelley Road, you can see that, yeah, the color doesn't come up that nicely there, but if you go look at my building, that is the same Booth Bay blue that I've called up. It's the most beautiful color. It's a really nice
Okay,
color and it
okay.
does stand out nicely. That's why I decided with that one.
Yeah.
I would be really worried to have black or anything that was really
Well,
dark.
That would
And
be-
we'd be open to trying to lighten up, but I did want contrast in the color too.
Yeah.
So that was partly what we decided to have, like the contrast there. To speak about the Strata Road, which is a private Strata Road. So it is double wide. Now there wouldn't be parking along the side of the road. I have small children that play on my street and I'm very active as a father and with them on bikes and trampolines and running around. So it's constantly in my mind is how that works. I do feel that because it's a strata road and the feel of the road, it's going to slow traffic down already. It's not going to be like a main artery road that has a 60-foot right of way and you're going to be speeding down it. Now, adding some speed bumps or those type of things would be something we'd be very open to make sure that there was speed humps to slow traffic down or signage that allowed people to make sure, because I want children to be safe. To speak to the rec room, it is 2 levels. And so there's 2 levels that will be used, but because the first lower level is within that flood area, it's not considered for square footage. Now it's non-living space. No one's going to live in there. Nothing's going to be stored in there. It's just an open recreational space to gather. And in the case of a 200-year flood with sea level rise, if there was all those things, stars aligning, and that bottom floor did get 10 inches of water, then people wouldn't be sleeping or living in there. They would just egress knowing the storm was going to happen and they wouldn't be in that space. The reason why we put the recreational building on that side was because it's backed right into this beautiful spot of the forest. And we really like it there. If you stand in that corner, it's a really nice space. The windows look right into that back corner. We've talked about having a mural on the back side of the building, which would be where the concrete wall is, and having an artist come in and paint the whole backside with some native mural species to make it look really nice. So that's something that we were looking at and working on in the background. We did talk about how do we connect this space to the whole forest and everything. This is a protected area. We're going to protect this. It's the only way you can get through it is through the right of way. No one's going to access this. It's a forest reserve. It's to be protected and stay the way it is. So originally my designs did have the idea of pathways going into this space so they could really use it, but we can't. It's to be protected. So I can't direct pathways there because then they're gonna cut pathways into that forest. Even if we don't show it, they will, once the development's done, people will go back there and create their own pathways and such. So we need to direct traffic to Turner Road, looping it back around onto the street so they can come down Turner Road, which is full access, onto the legal right of way, which will be a proper pathway. So they go down the pathway and beyond. So that's part of that, why it all worked the way it did. You know?
But the actual building, and I don't want to harp on about the building, the communal building isn't really very attractive. I think you could spend some more time with that.
Okay.
It's not inviting at all, so I don't know what else to say about it.
Something more interesting is what you're, something that,
Well, yeah, it has blocked the view and the idea that there's something beyond this sort of circulation of houses.
Yeah.
So, it's those bigger items that I think we're losing something that could be so good. That's, I'm excited by where this project is. And it needs more.
we were really excited too. And I think
Yeah.
there's been many people that have bought this property and owned it and been excited about doing stuff here as well. And so we're not the first people to be here in application for this property. The last David Jackson, who's a really nice guy who we've been working with, he's been helping us on this. He was trying to do a strata here that was a lot smaller, and he got crushed, and he lost a lot of money. And, it was a hard deal for him. And so now he's very supportive of where we are. And what he did was he wasn't fitting within the zoning and the multifamily zone and what this property is designed for from planning and from the community plan. We're meeting all that guidelines of zoning, and that's what it's for. And so here we are doing that. And now we're getting pushed back when we went this way, when it's supposed to be that way. So there's been people before him as well that the property's been sitting a long time. And here we are in a housing crisis. The province is pushing, and they're making everyone that is able to have 4 units per lot now. And this is ready to go. We can make this really special.
I'm sorry, but I would love for you to kind of cool down on the comment of the hardships and the effort. That's what everyone does who comes forward here at Design Panel. They're facing the same thing, and we're asking you to provide us with the information we need to properly give our feedback. And our feedback comes from our professional place. We understand, we can read the drawings, we understand everything. So we're trying to have an equal comment equally to every project we are presented with. And so some of our comments are saying, you're not there yet. And whereas others are there that we see. So it's not about denying the development or the housing or anything. We're trying to steer you towards having a complete project that fits within the guidelines that we are asked to measure it with, right?
No, and
And so it's, yeah, so
Sorry,
I feel like we can move beyond that and get
Yeah,
to our comments.
and we don't want to harp on that, and we take your comments seriously, and we take them to heart, and we'll make any adjustments, modifications that we would need to. And we respect all your backgrounds and your professionalism that you're bringing to the table today, and we'll go away considering all of that. Of course we will. So that, just want to reiterate that. This is not heated at all. This is just a conversation that we're having
No.
to make a better project, and we're all on board for that.
Yes, I'm just trying
Sure.
to say that we understand the whole process and everyone goes through it. Okay.
No, I mean, I'm just looking at the units, and you happen to have the very largest units on the side that should be more penetrable. For instance, so I think, I don't know, I think you're almost there, but I really think that
Those are 2-level units, the larger, taller units and the
Yeah.
larger massings on the higher side, on the back
Hmm.
side here. And those are more rancher style, so that's why they have a wider footprint, so they're lower down.
Hmm.
And which allow us to keep the massing down on that side, which would allow people while they're walking down the road to be able to see past and over and into the
Yeah.
forest.
And what's stopping those units from not being in a straight line, for instance?
Yes.
Anything?
Which units in a straight
The
line?
units on the right-hand side, it's next to the public garden space. I really don't want to be designing this.
I
one.
know.
We're not supposed to do that.
I know, I was thinking the same thought though.
How do you mean in a straight line?
Well,
On-
they're
on
in a
the-
dead
the-
straight
the-
line. He's talking about staggering them because you have that
Oh,
green
I see.
space where you've come closer to the boundary on the top unit. Why couldn't you come to the
So we have a walkway to meet egress, so
Yes.
that we have to have a walkway that interconnects. So any units, anything that's gonna be here is gonna have to have some sort of egress. We can put 15 feet of soil in there, then that's what other developers looked at, and it'd be 1,000 trucks of material that you bring in. And that's on the roads, it's gonna be on the neighbors, it's gonna be, we're gonna have to spend $1 million on that versus creating a really a smart solution that works that way. That would be the alternative to fill the whole site up, load it up, spend a year filling it up, and that's gonna be pretty hard on the neighbors, and then create a site that works in the way you're talking about. With 1,000 trucks of material, and how sustainable is that with all those trucks? To me, it doesn't
Can I
make
say
sense.
something for a minute? I don't think that's a response. You were asked whether it was possible to stagger those units. And you've come back with pardon me, but a bit of a threat that you could have filled the whole site.
That's what,
Could you just address the 4 units in a straight line, which is what Ian asked you?
we could stagger them by a couple feet, if that, for sure, there's absolutely. In a minimum amount, that'd be no problem to be able to create a bit wider walkway and stagger it. And I'd be very open to that idea. If it started being like 10 or 15, like actually creating a larger separation of staggering, it'd be really hard because you'd end up with this big zigzag walkway down the back. And I'd just be concerned about that part of it. That's all I was saying. And I was talking about previous developers. We've actually never seriously considered putting soil on the site like that. I wouldn't want to do that, right? Yeah.
There was an issue with the square meters of the rec space as well, right? By staggering them, possibly would cut into the size of that, correct, Lindsay?
It depends
On
on,
the east side of
well, we've,
those last
Mhm.
units. So it becomes kind of tight there in that green space.
We're talking about those 4 units.
Yeah, you
being
want front and-
stepped a couple of
front and
feet
back.
each,
Front-
just
and
to get rid of a
and I would
straight line.
love
It
to be-
shouldn't
to be-
affect that whatsoever.
we would do that in a heartbeat. It would be no problem at all to stagger that, because we do have room on that side to stagger. And I would be open to, even if we did that, and also looking at sidewalk connectivity on that. If we could push things over that way a little bit, we might even be able to get some more width on that drive aisle down there to make sure that there's a little bit more space. And what we could do is even paint a line for people to be able to walk on the side of the road to know that it's a bit safer on that side.
Yeah, and as Ian said, we're not trying to design it for you. These are suggestions.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Another option I've looked at too as well is because we have an in and out, we could also do one directional traffic. So it'd just be one way instead of 2 ways, and that's something that would work as well, except for the back units. So this could be an in and that could be an out. In that case, it would give a lot of room for people to be walking. And so, there's a lot of these strata roads that people use as a sidewalks. It's just a matter of making sure they're safe and people are driving slow. So one option would be the speed bumps to slow it down. Another option would be to limit the amount of cars driving past each other, because that's when you get a dangerous environment for kids. If a kid's running out and it's a blind corner as such. So I'm open to both those.
I just had one
Would there
comment.
be an option to change some of
Yeah.
the paving material, for instance, to define certain areas?
Yeah, that's right. So we have the parking would be pavers. And we had discussed that too, where you could have on either side of the asphalt strata road, you could have a paver strip as well. And that could designate an area that you walk on. So you can visually see, okay, we're driving in the middle. And so they would also add more elements to that driveway too. So I'm definitely open to that idea of creating some sort of.
Sarah, do you want to make your comment?
I just had
Right.
a couple things for Lindsay to think about and maybe have some further conversations as we're talking about traffic calming and changing some of the site access. I believe usually the fire department has some challenges with speed bumps and with different things. So if we're looking at reducing, changing paving materials or reducing those aisle widths, you may want to have an initial conversation first with the fire department,
Yeah.
just to make sure that for fire access, they still are meeting their minimum requirements.
Thanks, Sarah. Move on to Bruce.
Just
Bruce,
one
you have
quick,
anything
quick
on here?
question.
Oh, wait a
Um,
minute, sorry.
Would there be any difficulties with getting insurance for the project if you are sitting on a floodplain? I thought there was something in the BC.
No, there's not. We've looked into that right away
Right.
before we purchased the property.
Yeah.
And we talked to several different insurance groups as well as our geotechnical engineer
Right.
and our structural engineer and our civil engineer, and had all those in-depth conversations to make sure that we weren't gonna put
Right.
ourselves in a really precarious position. And so we do know that it's okay.
Sure. We've heard of bad stories in other places where, new development that's, be starting in a floodplain is at owner's risk and does not get insured, so just cover yourselves.
Like it makes you wonder about the main floor of the amenity building that if you've acknowledged it's in the floodplain and that got damaged, would it be insured?
Yeah.
And who's liable for it at that point if it isn't? It's probably the strata. So, yeah, I hear that point.
Yeah, and that's, okay.
Sorry, Bruce.
Okay, again, I think the look of the buildings is West Coast style architecture. I don't have a problem with the colors. They're very appropriate to the area, I think, and the surrounding vegetation. My question is the back of buildings 4 and 9. Do you have page B06? I know it's,
So,
you don't have a section, yeah, that's 4 and 9 is right there.
yes, that's right.
Yeah, so the backside of those on the lane
Yeah, right here.
is a 3-story blank space. I don't know if people realize that landscaping between the buildings is a full story high. Like that's at the level of the livable area. So if you look at your elevation on page B06, which shows a single elevation, but if you flipped it, you've got a massive flat space. I'm just wondering if there's some way that it can be, I don't even know what the materials are. I'm talking about this page here.
Yeah, no,
Is this concrete, the first 8 feet? Concrete and then hardy siding?
so it would be finished the same way that the garages are. On the, so that this would be the, originally we were looking at it stucco, but that would be hardy, painted the same color as these.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about between the buildings and the landscape area itself?
So
Is
there's gonna be a pump station there. That's the pump station below these patios. There'd be a lift station. So what we've done is that everything drains down into the middle area and then can drain and then get.
Oh, my question was, what does it look like?
Oh, there's.
Is it a blank concrete wall? Is
There'll
it,
be doors down there to
Okay.
access that underground for the lift station.
it's all concrete construction?
Yeah, so that, and, well, we would be open to having siding along there, but we'd want to treat it with 2 different types of siding, or we could do some sort of growing wall on that side. There's
Yeah.
a shading restraint, of course, so we'd have to talk to our.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
I just wondered what it would look like, what the people in those units across from it are gonna be looking at. You know, because there aren't any windows allowed, I guess, in the side of the building, so it is a large continuous, same color, same material space, which is frowned on in the guidelines. That's
Oh,
all.
I agree
Yeah.
with you, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have no other comments. Thanks.
I had just one last thing. I guess I missed on the first around. Does the gravel pit that you're using as a site, is any remediation required for that?
No, the sites it's not contaminated,
It's clean?
it's clean, yeah.
Okay. So at this point, we usually try to consolidate this into some recommendations. It's a lot of stuff been talked about. And by the way, I'm convinced with your garbage argument because I didn't appreciate you had a dedicated area, so I'm withdrawing that one for the central garbage. So if the panel will indulge me a little bit, I'll see what I kind of came up with as we were going along. I think a number one issue that we heard right off was to reconsider the planting list. We're looking for a more detailed planting list with, we'd like you to look at more native species, review your choices in siting, be more specific, and possibly consider some more evergreens for winter separation. Did I catch that right, Kate?
Yeah, and when diving into the specificity like I did, I feel like the whole plan, the whole landscape plan really needs to be reevaluated. Yeah, and reconsidered. And you have a lot of space to plant in that's just lawn. So, and I think it could be doing more service to buffering your development and creating and grounding your development in the site. So, yeah. I would like to see
So
just
this should include a
another
comprehensive
plan.
landscape plan.
Yeah.
So that would be our first item, and that is for this development permit area, that would be item 2C. I think.
Yeah.
Um,
And part of it is to be like the buffering between
Yep,
just that, think about the season.
so 2C and 2E.
Like meeting the plant list and the size of plants, so I can incorporate it in trees. Because it's not, I take your word for it, but it's on paper instead.
Okay, so we'll add 2C, 2E, and 2G to that recommendation. So there's a lot of things contained within it. Because our job is to see if you've met these guidelines, I have to mention that you should have an architect, and you should have, and I apologize if I said shall, a landscape architect, and we'd like to see evidence of their involvement, and that is 1K and 2K. So it doesn't sound like it'll be too hard to do because you've mentioned you have these people on retainer already. So we're looking for evidence of their
And
involvement.
we have the landscape architect, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, you've had a fair bit of, let's call it criticism of the overall project, more than I'm used to, which to me might have been ameliorated by having an architect and a landscape architect more closely involved. All we can recommend is should. We don't have the teeth to tell you that you must. So that would be 1K and 2K. Many people have mentioned the amenity building. And I think that we are basically looking for that you reconsider the size and configuration and design of that building. And I think we pretty much all agreed on that one. That's 1A. Accessibility, you've talked about, and you've indicated some willingness to do something about that. And so I think we don't think that it's accessible as shown and could be a lot better. So we would recommend that you review accessibility and try to improve it. And that would be,
Yes.
4A is the overall, and 4C, well, unfortunately, it doesn't talk about, avoid slopes of more than 1 unit rise of 12. Yeah, I don't think you can either, but it's avoid, not must not. So, again, these are things for you to consider. So yeah, I would go 4C for that one. There were enough comments on the color palette that I think you should at least review it. Not so much the blue. I like that blue too. It's just the brown is, like from where I'm sitting right now, it does look dark.
The dark wood you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
And it did print really dark. It did print really dark, whereas if you look at the sample
Yeah.
of this, right?
Yeah,
So
that's a lot
That's
different.
what I want it to feel like and that's why I made that this morning to bring it here, because that's what I have on my buildings right now, and
Did
it
you-
does have a really good feel.
Yeah, do you guys see that? Like, that's quite a bit lighter because
Yeah, rustic walnut, yeah. Yeah, and that's what we would feel. We want to have that look like wood. We don't want it to look like painted wood.
Yeah.
Because that's the other option is to buy hardy, cheap hardy and paint it, like, make it look like wood, and we don't want that. That material is a fair bit more expensive than regular hardy. And I chose to use it on my site because I feel like it does look better and it lasts longer. So very much agree with that. And we're gonna actually use our soffits in the same material, a similar material. So it's gonna look like wood on our soffits is what the plan was, so especially in the areas that you can see, and they'll be non-combustible then too. Yeah.
Okay. I had mentioned putting some glass in your garage doors to get some light
Yep,
into your
definitely.
garages. I think that's an easy one. That would be 1A. 1B. So, well, the glass in the doors would be 1A, I think, Kate. 1B is more the view, which I was going to get to. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing was to review the limited views from the units and what you can do from a configuration point of view to perhaps improve the views a bit of the parkland next to them. And that would be 1B.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I had that noted too. Yeah.
1C. For 1C, I just wanted the lane side of buildings 4 and 9 to be looked at, because right now they're a
Large
large
expanse of
monochrome
one
expanse.
material.
Yeah, so that's 1C.
So buildings 4 to 9.
4 and 9.
4 and 9, sorry. Avoid large expanses of material 1C.
Yeah.
Just for you to review that.
Yeah.
So, Mary?
Comment about landscapes, those sites, these single resident. Haven't mentioned that, so that's one thing. That goes back to the landscape design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even now, we have a great relationship, with our ownership changes. We have to think about that as well.
Have we covered it in general? Sorry, have we covered it in general? Okay, folks, the thing we now have to just consider amongst, what is our recommendation? Do we want to send this back with our comments, or would we like to see it again? Straw poll. No. There's too many things. Yep. See it again?
Yes.
Okay, so those are that's what we've kind of narrowed the comments down to, and the recommendation here would be like a request for reconsideration. So what we'd like you to do is come back and address those things for us. And I think that would be the best way to do it, rather than send along this list and not ever know kind of what became of it. I think we'd like to have another look at it. So I would say that we would request reconsideration by the panel, and it's with respect to it's the guidelines for DP area 4 and the number of points that we've just itemized. So can somebody move that for me?
I'll move it
Okay.
as presented.
I think I saw a nod from Ian, so he'll second.
Yeah.
Good. Did somebody move? We adjourn the meeting? That's my man. Seconder.
I'll second.
All right. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you. Hope we weren't too tough on you, but
Well, this is, at the end of the day, this all better. We're working as a team.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that, and I definitely know we can do better in some areas. And we'll work really hard to facilitate as many of the changes as possible, honestly. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
That's our expectation for every
I would agree. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Yeah. You want to call it?
I'll carry somebody who can give out one go. Yeah.